Change is a hard thing to do, but there are definitely ways that we can make change happen in our lives and do it with some sort of ease and maybe even enjoyment. So today, that is what I'm going to be talking about. Hello, I am Julia Ravey and I am a neuroscientist slash science communicator, and I love talking about the brain, why we behave the way we do, and all things about goal setting. And today is the day! My new book, Braintenance, is out now. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've written a whole book all about goal setting, how to use what we know about the brain, how it works in terms of neuroscience, psychology, put it all together into this book with exercises to apply to your life and your goal. And I think this was the book that I definitely needed to read a few years ago when I was in one career and I wanted to switch over to the one that I'm in now. And this is sort of what I learned along the way. So if you want to buy it, you can order it now. The link is in the bio below. Let's just put you back over here, baby. Okay. Change often brings with it a lot of resistance. And even though you feel like this activity, whatever I'm going to do now, is going to be so good for me, it could be that you're trying to go to the gym, it could be that you're trying to start working on a book or a side project or moving careers, and you know that the activity is good for you, but you still get this thing rising in you, this resistance, which is massively off-putting, and it makes you feel like it's either not the right thing for you to do to make this change. You read the resistance as a sign that this isn't right for me, or it just acts as a huge barrier to actually getting the things done that you want to do. So this is why the brain doesn't like change. The first reason is familiarity. We have a preference for the familiar as the brain develops when we are young babies all the way through into adolescence. There's this huge period of plasticity in the brain. And that is when our brains are essentially taking in the world around us, and based on what it interprets from those situations it's put in, it then comes up with appropriate responses and reactions to keep you safe. The brain is obviously capable of change after the age of 25, like I'm 30 now, and I've definitely made huge changes after I was 25, and I continue to make big changes today. The brain still has ways of augmenting these reactions and responses based on new information that it gets. It's just a little bit more work to do it now. I like to think of it almost as most of the situations you encounter on a day-to-day basis, you've encountered before. So the brain already has a programmed response to it. Something like stress. You will have felt stress at some point when you were younger, and the brain will have got some different responses for, okay, if we feel stressed, this is what we do. We do A, B, C, D. So when it comes to familiarity, we can feel resistance when we're doing something unfamiliar because the brain is sending the signals to perform the action that it already knows is an appropriate response to the situation that it's in. If you're trying to deviate from that path and do something new, there are going to be times where the brain will already have activated the cells that are all involved in this other response together, and it's almost like the body is trying to follow through with whatever the brain has directed it to do in that situation. So that is why it's quite difficult in terms of trying to do new unfamiliar things. The brain, it just has a preference for this familiarity. We can see this in cognitive biases as well. These are mental shortcuts that our brains take, again, to try and solve situations very quickly in front of it. There is the mere exposure effect. So that is a cognitive bias where if you are exposed to something multiple times, so you are familiar with it, that thing will feel more right to you. Even if it isn't right, it's just because the brain has experienced it multiple times. But when you are after a goal or when you're trying to make a change, you are going to have to process information in alien ways. And that can feel like a big drain on the brain. A few solutions here then is to think about what change is it that you want to make and how can you make tiny tweaks that encompass something that is familiar to you. Say, for example, you're wanting to move a little bit more, exercise a little bit more. And the goal is, I want to be able to go out and run a 10-kilometer race. At the minute, I drive to work and I park my car right outside the office. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drive to work and I'm going to park my car 2 streets away from the office and I'm going to start walking in. That is a tiny change. It's still familiar. It's the same route. It's the same action. All you're changing is the amount of steps between the car and the office door. But if you're increasing that slightly, that'll be getting the fitness up. So then when you try and start doing the running later on, you'll already be feeling a little bit fitter. That is the tiniest little tweak. But the brain, it's almost like sneaking in the back door because the brain doesn't really see it as being unfamiliar. So I always think, how can I make a small change to my routine that the brain won't really notice is new? And can I add that in? And how in those tiny, 5-10 minutes, those little bits over time add up massively when you're trying to make a change. Next up is uncertainty. This is one of the states that the human brain hates the most because one of our brain's main jobs is to predict what is going to happen next. Based on the situation I'm in right now, the options are X, Y, Z, because that's what's happened in before. So I can imagine scenario X, Y, and Z, and I have a little plan for all of them. I have a little, this is what I'd say if they say this. This is what I'd do if they do this. The brain is priming us to act in a certain way based on past knowledge of certain situations. When the brain doesn't have an answer, this can drive anxiety. And there are individuals who live with chronic anxiety, with anxiety disorders, but everyone will probably experience anxiety at some point if they aren't sure about what is coming next. Because what this can lead to is the brain is going, okay, well, I don't really know what's going to come next. So I'm just going to think of 20 different scenarios, really get into your head, overthink. We can go to catastrophizing, which is where we think of the worst possible outcome for a situation. And that feels like it's going to happen. That we cling to that and we go, oh my God, if I send that one email to that one person, then everyone's going to find out, everyone's going to laugh at me and I'm going to lose my job. Like, it's not going to happen, but that's where the brain will jump to, especially when it's in this state of uncertainty. When we're trying to make a change, we want to know that the plan that we've got is going to work. We don't like thinking, like, no one wants to say, I'm going to do this fitness regime and after 3 months, it's not going to work. We want to know that that plan is going to be effective. And if we start to feel uncertain about that plan, that can then trigger avoidance behaviors. Anxiety triggers avoiding. And if we feel uncertain about, okay, we've done this for a few weeks now and I just don't, I'm not certain that this is going to work, that can then trigger this avoidance behavior of, okay, well, if I don't think it's going to work, then there's no point in me doing it. That uncertainty kicks into gear and thinks, oh, maybe we should try something else then instead. Uncertainty makes us just want to get out of whatever situation we're in and find the situation where we're going to have that predictability. But uncertainty is literally the only certainty in life. You can't say that this plan is definitely going to work. There's always going to be uncertainty. So I think when you're trying to make a change, uncertainty has to be not just, planned for, but expected and almost embraced in a way. Like if you feel a bit uncertain, it's normally a sign that you're heading in the right direction because you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. So the solutions here that I have is think about the next small step ahead of you. Anxiety sees us try and predict the very end outcome. We want to know if in a year's time what we're doing now is going to be worth it. I like having a big goal, but what I like to do is scale that goal down. I like to split it into different milestones. I have a whole video on how I do this here. And I then look at the first milestone on that list and I forget about everything else and that becomes the goal. And I think as well for uncertainty, a really great mitigator of this is just to follow what you enjoy and follow what makes you happy. And that sounds maybe a bit like, follow what makes you happy. But if you are trying to make a change in your life, it normally is because you're trying to improve something about your life. And so if you're following joy in that thing, if you make whatever activity it is you're trying to do fun in some way, then you're not thinking, okay, is this going to work? Oh my goodness. You're not in that state because you're just looking forward to doing the activity. So for me, when I go to the gym, I only listen to my 2 favorite podcasts when I'm at the gym. Don't listen to them any other time. And that means that when I go to the gym, I'm looking forward to just listening to my podcast rather than thinking, oh my God, my squats today, like, is that even going to work? Is that going to get the results that I want? I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking, like, get me in the gym so I can put my headphones in and switch off from the rest of the world. Next up is effort. I'm recording at the worst time of day here because the light has just completely changed. I've recorded at sunset in the winter, so I apologize. My face probably looks really different now to what it was looking like before. Anyway, the next on my list is effort. And when we want to make a change, we have to put in effort. Even with really small changes, we are having to put effort in, because what we are having to do is tell the brain that this is the action we want to perform in this situation. We are having to form new connections in the brain, which takes effort and energy. And so with anything new that you're doing, there will always be this effort barrier. When you're making a change, you're trying to do something new, you're having to engage these frontal parts of your brain, because this is where our attention is and where we make decisions. So this frontal part of the brain is really important for that. But this part of the brain, annoyingly, is subject to fatigue. That is because of the way the cells in it are arranged. So their arrangement means they can only handle so much information at once. And also because if you are stressed or if you are in a panic, then energy from those parts of the brain will be redirected to other parts of the brain to get you out of that situation. And so it will normally direct you to start performing old patterns, old routines that are already programmed in. So instead of you having to think, oh, I'm going to consciously choose to do this today, it's more of a subconscious, okay, go on autopilot for a little bit, just do that thing that's already plugged in to the system. We can just press go and you can do that, and we're not having to use energy to make choices in this situation. So my solutions to this, the first one is have a low barrier to entry. Have a low barrier to entry with whatever activity it is you're trying to do. I think of the smallest step possible. For me, writing this book, my goal every day was to write 3 sentences. That was it. The goal is write 3 sentences. Now, that is, I didn't obviously write the book just by writing 3 sentences a day, because that would have taken years. But by having a goal of write 3 sentences, it means that the effort, when I think about that in my head, I go, I can write 3 sentences. If that's even too much, you could say write 1 sentence. I can write 1 sentence, so I could just do that now. And that means that you are being consistent over time, which is so important to make change. You have to be consistent with what you are doing. So it's a really good sneaky barrier to entry. Another solution to this is to reward effort, because a lot of the time we reward results, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But if you are putting effort in, reward doing that, because that is a huge part of reinforcing behavior. The brain looks to reward as a signifier of what it's just done is right. So if you've written those 2 sentences or ran for 2 minutes, give a little celebration. What I do for my celebration is really simple. I have a box on a piece of paper, and I have a line in it when I start the 2 minutes, and then when I finish the 2 minutes, I put another line in it. And that to me is like, oh, I've achieved my goal for the day. It's like a little moment of celebration. Next up, in terms of why change is so hard, is because of the lack of results we see really early on in the change process. We want results yesterday. We want the fast race time. We want the successful career. We want the gorgeous house. We want it all, and we want it now. And we feel as if we can make a change today and those things will be with us really quickly. It's almost like we have this big vision of what we want, and we expect that to be the payoff very, very soon. Motivation is driven by reward. This is mediated in part by a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is a motivator. It's important in the brain for movement, and it's important for reward. And if you are in a situation where you've been rewarded, there is often a release of dopamine in the brain to signal whatever you just did then was really good. This dopamine release is almost like a snapshot. What it will do is capture all of the bits of information in the environment, all of those cues around it that led to getting that reward. And then when you're faced with a similar situation, dopamine is released in anticipation of the reward. So it's almost like if you got this amazing cake from a new coffee shop that you walk past, your brain may have taken in the shop front as that's where that amazing cake was sold. And then when you next walk past it, dopamine might be released and say, oh, that's where we got that reward that time, you might feel a pull to go into that shop and get that banging cake again. With long-term change, we are often driven by the result from whatever that goal is going to be. But that is not going to be the rewards for a very, very long time. Often we have very big goals. That end ideal will not be enough to help you get on with the stuff you need to do day to day. There is often a long period of time at the start of any new endeavor where not much seems to happen. If you're trying to like lose weight, for example, you might lose a bit of weight initially and then everything sort of seems to stop and you're going, wait, what is happening? If you're trying to start a new creative career, like you're trying to start a YouTube channel, you'll be posting videos for months, often without many people seeing them at all. And this big gap in not getting any results means that motivation can hugely drop off. As a solution to this barrier, I would say that you should focus on building skills and not on getting results. If you think of whatever it is that your goal is, think about the skill that is required to get that goal. If you wanted to start a YouTube channel, you wanted to present on camera, the goal shouldn't be, I want to have 20,000 subscribers. Okay, that could be a goal, but it's a very hard thing for you to control. And it's a hard motivator to have when literally no one is watching any of your videos. So instead you should think about what skills would I have or be really good at by the time I had 20,000 subscribers. And that would be presenting on camera, getting good at editing, being creative with graphics, art. These are all now skills that you can work on. You can think, okay, how can I become a better presenter? How can I get better at editing? I could take a course. How could I get better at graphic design? I could practice drawing on my iPad. These are now things that you can actually do to take action. So if you focus instead on building skills, then results will come in some way, shape or form down the line, but it might not be the exact result that you wanted. And the time frame for that may shift and it might change and all of that. But if you focus on building skills, then you will see progress. And the next solution is something which I call same time, same place. Because if we are being swayed by results, it's then very easy to start to skip things and be like, okay, well, this workout isn't working for me, so I'm not going to go. And it's not the long-term you that's saying that. It's not the you who sat planning and really thinking about, I want this to happen. It's the short-term snap decision brain where it's weighing up the value of the options in front of it. And if it thinks that the workout it's going to do is going to be pointless, then it's going to say, well, that's going to take a lot of effort. I'm not going to get anything from it. So devalue, and instead I'll sit on the couch and watch TV. So I like to try and have a block in my calendar that repeats every day. Monday to Friday, I'll have a block in my calendar for whatever goal it is I'm trying to do. And I will then show up to do that activity then. For when I am trying to exercise, I have a block in my calendar every day for exercise. And I sometimes go to the gym and do like an intense workout, or I'll go on a run. Other times I'll just go on a walk. But if I'm showing up at the same time every day, then what I'm teaching my brain is this is the time when I do this activity. And so think of a few variations of whatever activity it is you're trying to do. Put a block in your calendar for however long that takes, maybe a bit longer, half an hour to an hour, and just show up every day. And that is if you're trying to write a book, show up and write a few sentences and that could be it, or show up and read an article for the book. But if you're doing it every day, then the brain is getting that little block into its routine. And finally, a big thing that gets in the way of change is our environment. Because our environment is not just a room or a city or a hotel. Our environment is filled with triggers. And it might be the case that you can sometimes try and start an activity and it feels out of nowhere, you've got this resistance coming in and you're like, where is this coming from? If I try and get up early in the morning in my family home in Liverpool, I find it so difficult to just get up and do a workout because I've associated that room with being a teenager and sleeping in till really, really late. So it's almost like the environment that I'm in. My brain, it's like it reloads a game. It's like a PlayStation game. It's like, this is the rules of this world. This is the rules of this space. In this space, you sleep in until noon. So when I'm trying to get up at my normal time, I'm like fighting against it. Like, why is this so difficult? So that's one thing. And also the people around you as well can be forms of resistance. And this is quite a hard thing. It took me quite a while to like actually see this. But those closest to you really want the best for you. They want you to succeed, they want you to do well. But your change means change for them too, sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't, but there are times when it does. If you have a friend who you always go out for drinks with on a Wednesday and Thursday night, and then you tell them, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to drink in the week anymore, and because I want to go to the gym early in the morning. You may get some pushback from that friend, not because of what you want to do for yourself, but more they're thinking, oh my God, I love going for a drink on a Wednesday and Thursday, and now I'm not going to be able to do that anymore because my friend is not going to do that. So some people see your change as either they have to change too, or as a confrontation to how they're living their life, because they're thinking, well, why are you changing that? Should I change it? I didn't want to change it. I'm not doing anything wrong. And it can get a bit. And then also there is this element of protection as well. If you are pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone with something, if you're wanting to start a creative career and you start posting your artwork online, you know that for the first bit, there's going to be not much attention. There's not going to be that many eyes on you. There's not going to be that many rewards, accolades. There is going to be failure. And if your family or friends can sense that you are feeling a bit uncomfortable, they can swoop in and almost be like, oh my goodness, what's wrong? Let's protect you. But in the quest for change, you need to fail. In the quest for change, you need to try things out, trial and error. And I think sometimes our closest friends can come from a really nice place, but it can feel like, oh my God, I almost don't want to tell them that I'm doing this thing because I don't want them to be like, oh, are you sure? Like, is that going to be okay? What's plan B? And then our environment, in terms of our digital environment, this device now, oh my goodness, this influences so much about how we act and what we do. If you have a social media feed that's filled with negative news or people that you really compare yourself to, but in a way that isn't useful, and you're like, oh my God, they're doing so much better than me, and then you feel awful. Like, if you pick up your phone for a little break to have a scroll, and then you come out of it feeling like that, you know, it might just be like, well, what's the point in me trying to do anything as well? So there are a few things there that we can definitely have some solutions for. Firstly, I like to read the room and then edit. So if I'm trying to start a new behavior in a new space, say in this kitchen here, I am going to change my diet and cook more healthy food. If in this kitchen in the past, I've been cooking loads of pizzas, then I might think to myself, I might feel resistance to chopping a pepper in here. And that isn't to say I need a new kitchen, rip it all out and start again. It's more just to go, okay, I'm feeling a bit of resistance here because this is not what I'm used to doing in this space. I'm used to like chucking chips in the oven and off you go. I love oven chips, by the way, like no offense, I absolutely love them. I'd have them every day if I could. But just to think about what came in the space before, and then if you can edit the space, tweak it slightly. Yes, home edit, big fan, love it. You can edit the space slightly to make it easier to do the activity you're doing in there. So I wouldn't have pizzas in the freezer. I'd instead have frozen peas. I don't know, that example was maybe a bit weird. With other people, I almost like to ease people into what my new endeavor is gonna be. It's like easing yourself into cold water. And, you know, sometimes you can just take the plunge and you go in and that's great, you know, that works. But also, you know, when you like put your toe in and you go, that is freezing. But if your toe's in for a little bit of time, it feels normal. And with each bit of your body you put in, the longer it's in there, the more it feels normal. I like to do this sometimes with my goals, with my family and friends. It's not that I'm hiding things from them. It's more like dripping them bits of information, making small changes to my routine that isn't gonna set their alarms off like change, change, change. It's more they're just getting used to me doing things a little bit differently. So if your family ate meat and you want to be vegan, right? I've been there. That can be a bit of a fracture situation because they see that as you're telling them that what they're doing is wrong. Been there. You could maybe try and just do little things, little tweaks that they will then just get used to over time. So if, for example, you started having oat milk in your tea, then if you just started doing that and just, oh no, I'm just trying oat milk for now, like I like that, they will then just get used to you have oat milk in your tea. Instead of it's like, oh my God, there's a huge change. It's like, that's one tiny thing. And the last thing is this little device, careful curation. What are you taking in on your phone? I have now this year, this has been something which is going to be a big change to my device, how it looks at my feeds, is I've written a list of all my role models. There's a lot. I've written like 25 people on there. all my role models, all the people who have either achieved a goal that I want to achieve, they have a really great attitude to life, they have qualities that I would love to have more of, they're uplifting. I've written them down, and now on my devices, I've favorited them as my, people on social media. I've favorited them. Anyone who's like negative, they've been muted, but curate my feed so it's filled with people who are inspiring me. So when I pick up my phone for a scroll, then I am getting uplifted. I'm not going to be dragged into comparisonitis or feel crap about myself. Those are all my little tips about change today. I don't know how long this video ended up being. I ended up going on a little bit, I think. But this book is now out, and these tips are all in here. This book is all about how to make change in a way that is an effective way. There's loads more tips in here I can't even begin to describe. I've just pulled open a page which is all about self-esteem and self-efficacy and building belief in yourself, because for me that's been something that's been really challenging when I'm trying to do something outside my comfort zone. So it's all in here. If you want to order it now, you can do, which is exciting. And if you like videos about the brain, behavior, why we do some of the weird things we do, then you can subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.